Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us for today's webinar titled Secure Funding for California Combustion Freight and Marine Projects. We're excited to share details and information with you about this funding solicitation from the South Coast AQMD. My name is Barbara Brentano. I'm the Manager for Engagement Marketing at Gladstein Leandros and Associates, or G&A, a clean transportation and energy consulting firm, and we're helping out on the technical end today with the webinar. Before we get rolling, there's a little housekeeping to go over here. A recording of this webinar will be sent out by the start of next week to the email that you used to register for this event. At the end of the webinar, before you close your browser, we kindly ask that you complete our quick 30-second survey. Your feedback is truly appreciated. If you have any technical issues during the webinar, the contact information is there for Ben Chan, and please reach out to him. Now I'd like to introduce Ping Gui with the South Coast AQMD. She will be presenting the information today about this important funding solicitation. Ping, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you so much, Barbara. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Ping Gui, and I am the Program Supervisor for the Volkswagen Environmental Mitigation Program for the South Coast AQMD. Today's presentation is designed to give you an overview and some details about the second statewide solicitation for the Combustion Freight and Marine Projects category of the VW Mitigation Program. The VW Environmental Mitigation Trust is the result of a settlement with Volkswagen for their illegal use of defeat devices in certain 2.0 and 3.0 liter VW diesel vehicles, and the VW trust funds are intended to fully mitigate the excess NOx emissions caused by VW's actions. The California Air Resources Board, or CARB, is the designated lead agency acting on the state's behalf as a beneficiary to implement California's allocation of VW Trust Fund. CARB approved a Beneficiary Mitigation Plan, or BMP, which identified program criteria for the state in the 5 funding categories as shown in the pie chart. These project categories are administered statewide by 3 different air districts. Today's focus will be on the combustion category, administered by South Coast AQMD. The second statewide solicitation for the combustion category will begin accepting applications on June 22nd, 2021 at 1 p.m. Pacific time. Eligible projects under this category include Class 7 and 8 freight trucks, dray trucks, waste haulers, dump trucks, and concrete mixers, freight switcher locomotives, and ferries, tugboats, and towboats. Applications will be accepted on a first-come, first-served basis from applicants throughout the state of California. The combustion category was allocated a total of $60 million, and the first installment is for $30 million. Due to the previous solicitation closing undersubscribed, this second solicitation will have about $26 million available in project funds. The VW program, again, is a statewide program and is available to both public and private entities to replace or repower older vehicles or equipment with the cleanest commercially available internal combustion or hybrid technologies. Again, solicitation will be first come, first served, and at least 50% of the funds are expected to be used for projects benefiting disadvantaged or low-income communities. To apply, you'll need to use South Coast AQMD's web-based application portal, also called the Grant Management System, or GMS. There are no paper applications, no exceptions, everything is electronic. The first step is to register as an applicant, which is defined as the legal owner of the vehicle or equipment or an engine manufacturer applying on behalf of the legal owner. You are allowed to, but not required, to have a consultant help you through the application process. If you are using a consultant, you'll need to assign them an application you've created in the GMS, so they are able to work on it. However, a consultant cannot sign an application for the applicant. If you choose not to use a consultant, South Coast AQMD staff is available to help you with any questions you may have. And if you're interested, we have more information on using a consultant in the resources section of our VW website. Please note, you cannot take possession of any funded new equipment or start any work on a repower project until a contract is executed. As for out-of-state international registration plans, or IRPs, they're eligible if you can demonstrate 75% operation in California. To be eligible, you'll need to demonstrate that for the past 12 months, your existing vehicle or equipment was operated at least 75% of the time in California. And if you're funded, the new unit must also meet this criteria. In addition, existing freight trucks must operate a minimum of 20,000 miles per year and 10,000 miles per year for waste haulers. Old and new units have to be available for inspections, and fleets must be in compliance with all state and federal regulations. The VW program is a scrap and replacement program. Therefore, old vehicles, equipment, or engines must be scrapped. As for some general funding information, there is a funding limitation of $3 million per entity for this solicitation, so you can apply for multiple units. And as always, the total award amount cannot exceed the actual cost of the new unit. Co-funding can't be combined with any state fund, such as with the Carl Moyer and HVIP programs. However, you can potentially stack VW funds with other local funds which do not claim NOx emission reductions. Therefore, please do reach out to your local air districts to see if other funding sources are available. This table and the table on the next slide summarize funding and eligibility for non-government owned and government owned equipment. For non-government owned equipment, there is both a percentage cap and a funding cap. While for just government owned equipment, there is only a maximum incentive cap. We'll go into more eligibility and funding details in the next few slides, but if you'd like a copy of both tables, they can be downloaded via South Coast AQMD's VW website. Starting with on-road vehicles. Class 7 and 8 freight trucks, waste haulers, dump trucks, and concrete mixers are eligible for funding. Replacement or repower technology must be certified at or below the optional low NOx standard of 0.02 grams per brake horsepower hour. Class 7 and 8 are differentiated by their gross vehicle weight rating as established by the vehicle's GVWR label. And eligible engine model years for this solicitation is from 1992 to 2012. However, fleets, not just the applicable vehicle itself, must be compliant with all current rules and regulations. As for locomotive, for the VW program, funding is limited to freight switcher locomotives only. Railcar movers are not eligible for funding. Switchers must be replaced or repowered to Tier 4 standard. The old engine must be pre-Tier 1. The unit must operate at least 1,000 hours annually, and the engine horsepower must be between 1,006 and 2,300. Lastly, we have marine vessels. For marine vessels, only ferries, tugs, and hulls are eligible. And for this category, only repowers to Tier 4 or hybrid with Tier 4 emission standards are allowed. The old engine must be pre-Tier 3, and the vessel must serve a dedicated purpose. For example, a ferry that also does private excursions would not be considered eligible. So moving on to funding. The VW program has two different funding caps, of which the lesser amount is awarded. The first cap is a percentage of the unit cost, and the second cap is a set dollar amount. These limits are different between public and private entities. For trucks, if you're a government agency, the caps are either you can receive up to 100% of the cost for the replacement truck or $85,000. However, it's likely that the cost will exceed $85,000, but that would still be the capped award amount since it's the lesser amount. Now, if you're a private entity, funding is at 25% of the cost of the unit or 50% specifically for Class 8 dray trucks. Again, not exceeding the $85,000 cap. Repowers follow the same logic with just different percentages and maximum dollar cap. To help everyone understand this a little bit better, we'll have some funding examples coming up soon. Switcher locomotives also follow this logic, just with different percentages and maximum dollar amounts. The maximum award amount is capped at $1.35 million for both replacement and repower. But for repowers, this amount would be for the entire unit, regardless of the number of engines you are actually repowering for. And lastly, for marine vessels, replacements are not eligible, only repowers. Please be aware that the maximum award amount of $1 million is for the entire vessel, regardless of the number of engines to be repowered. The following slides are examples of how to calculate the potential award amount. In this first scenario, we're replacing a Class 8 freight truck that is not a drayage truck. This truck is owned by a private entity and the cost of the new truck is $200,000. We reference our funding table to obtain the two caps and see that 25% of $200,000 is $50,000, which is less than the $85,000 funding cap. And we always have to take the lower of the two. So the actual award amount for this scenario is $50,000. Now, if we took the same scenario but changed it to a drayage truck, we start by checking our funding table, and we'll find out that a non-government Class 8 drayage truck has a percentage of cap of 50% of the cost of the unit. So $100,000 in this case. But the maximum funding cap is $85,000, and you can't exceed that amount, which makes it our final award amount. Now, quickly going over some estimated timelines and basic application requirements. Again, solicitation for the combustion category is first come, first served, and applications will be accepted beginning June 22nd, 2021 at 1 p.m. Pacific time to applicants across the state of California. Solicitation will close once all funds have been exhausted. Evaluation and contracting will be continuous, An annual report will be expected beginning 2023. So what do you need to begin an application? You'll need a copy of your vehicle title or proof of ownership for switchers and marine vessels, 12 months of usage records, insurance documentation, and for on-road vehicles, 12 months of vehicle registration, an itemized vendor quote, and engine information for the new and old units with photos as supporting documentation. During evaluation, we're checking to make sure your project meets all eligibility and compliance requirements, calculating NOx emission reductions, and determining how much funding a project is allowed. Afterwards, projects selected will receive a contract, which for this program will be 3 years. The contract will have requirements to meet milestones, such as in-service dates of new units, which currently will be 18 months from the contract effective date or the compliance date, whichever is earlier. Usage, such as demonstrating 75% operation in California, reporting, record keeping, and allowing the program administrator access to vehicle or equipment inspections and record audits. As for payments, payment is by reimbursement only, and after we've received a complete and valid invoice, verified that program requirements have been met, ensure that the new unit has been placed into service, and finally, all inspections are completed, and we've received proof of old unit destruction. After your contract is executed, you need to submit 3 years of annual report to keep all program records for at least 6 years and demonstrate that the units operate within California for the term of the contract. Now, some noteworthy changes specifically for this second solicitation of the combustion category. 1, the solicitation is now first come, first served. 2, FET and the sales taxes are no longer eligible costs. And 3, a minimum usage of 20,000 miles for freight trucks, dray trucks, dump trucks, is required. For additional information, please visit our VW website at aqmb.gov/VW. Please also take a look at the resources section of the website, where you'll find the funding and eligibility tables, frequently asked questions, a guide for using a consultant, and a lot of other information. And of course, you can also reach us via phone or email. We also included some helpful links, such as the California VW webpage administered by the 3 Air District, and links to information by CARB, such as the BMP and locating your local air district. That concludes the main presentation, and now we will open for questions.
Good morning, everyone. I see one question coming in from the audience. Someone asked, could you please go over the funding amounts for yard truck? I believe these are cargo handling equipment for Class 7.
So yard trucks actually do not fall under the combustion category. There is actually no funding eligible for that particular equipment category. Yard trucks are funded under the zero emission freight and marine projects category, which is administered by the Bay Area AQMD. So if you are looking for yard truck funding, please go to Bay Area's website and take a look at that category. So 2 different categories, not to be confused.
Someone asked, please respond to the fact that the tugs and towboats engine frequently exceed 2300 horsepower, and the engine costs more than 1 million per engine. We typically have at least 2 engines on a harbor tug. So the person asks, is this type of vessels excluded?
So for tugs, no, tugs are actually included in the solicitation. There is unfortunately that total funding cap. So you can still apply for funding, but just be aware that there is that total cap. And
thank you. Another question is coming in. Do mixers qualify for funding?
yes, concrete mixers are eligible funding as long as you fall into the Class 7 and Class 8 categories.
One more question coming in. Is a CNG engine meeting the 0.2 NOx eligible for funding?
It has to be 0.02 NOx, so it has to be the ultra low NOx. So if it's 0.2, then it's not eligible, but if it's 0.02, it is eligible.
Okay, thank you. Can a funding for locomotive switcher include zero emission, or must it be diesel to diesel?
So as of right now, the BMP only allows for diesel to diesel. Conversations have been begun with ARB to discuss the potential of adding a ZE switcher as a potential funding category. And throwing it out there for everyone, if you have this type of technology, or if you're interested in this technology, please do shoot us an email at vwfunds@aqmd.gov. We'd love to hear from you, and this will also allow us to continue the conversation with CARB.
Okay. Next question, would a truck with out-of-state registration be eligible if it runs 80% in California?
So as long as you can demonstrate 75% operation within California, yes, IRPs will be accepted.
Okay. The next question coming in, when is the contract date for these projects forecasted?
So because this is the first come, first served solicitation, contracting is based upon when we receive the equipment and complete the evaluation. So for those who submit their applications earlier, you will obviously receive your contract much earlier. So it's sort of a moving target depending on when you submit your applications. But the contract term, again, is 3 years, and the in-service date is 18 months from contract effective date.
Yeah, and this is Vicki. I work as a manager in the Technology Advancement Office at South Coast AQMD, so I work along with Ping on the Volkswagen mitigation program. I just wanted to add a little bit more to what Ping said. The benefits of a first come, first served solicitation is that upon deeming the application complete and eligible, we can go ahead and initiate the contract at that time. We don't have to wait until all applications have been evaluated and ranked to be selected for funding. So we can go ahead and move forward with the contract as soon as the application is deemed complete and eligible. Thanks for that question.
I see one more question coming in. Is there funding available for fleets that are outside the South Coast AQMD boundary?
Yes, definitely. So just throwing it out there for everyone again, statewide solicitation, there are no boundaries as long as you operate within California. It doesn't matter if you're in San Francisco or in San Diego or even in San Joaquin. It's not a AQMD only solicitation. statewide solicitation. So please feel free to take a look. And if you're interested, please do apply.
The next question, is there a certain amount of miles of concrete mixer must travel?
So currently, for anything that falls under the freight category, excluding waste haulers, we do require a minimum mileage of 20,000 miles annually. For waste haulers, it's actually only 10,000 miles. This is to ensure that your project is cost effective and we do get the emissions reductions needed for this program.
The next question about that concrete mixer, this truck typically idle for hours at a time in order to complete the jobs. And they don't travel very long distance, but emit a ton of NOx. Can idling hours be considered for mixer trucks?
I think that might be a case-by-case situation that might be just very specific to concrete mixers. Definitely shoot us an email. You can also apply and we can evaluate that based on a case-by-case scenario. We can definitely reach out to CARB to better understand their stance on these PTO sort of hours.
And just to add to what Ping said, that is allowed under other programs, so we will do our best. I would recommend submit the application or reach out to us like Ping said, and we will see if we can include it. That's a good question.
Okay. One more question coming in, Ping. We understand that the destruction of truck is the responsibility of the applicant. What is the approximate cost to destroy a truck?
I do believe that depends on the dismantlers. Some, I believe, are very low cost or free, and others might charge a fee. The only requirement we do have for dismantling of an on-road vehicle is that they do have to be a dismantler that has a contract or MOU with an air district. It doesn't matter what air district. And we will actually be publishing a list of dismantlers that have an MOU that you can actually reach out to for the VW program.
Yeah, the cost would be negotiated between the applicant and the dismantler. That's not a cost that we include within this program. So that's something that would be negotiated or agreed to between you and the dismantler. As Ping said, we do require that you take it to an approved dismantler, a dismantler that's been approved to receive vehicles for scrapping under this program. And if you need a list of those dismantlers, Ping would be more than happy to help guide you in that direction.
I see one question about switcher locomotive. Someone asked about the eligibility of emission controls to install the emission controls installation on a freight switcher locomotives.
So from my understanding is that currently the program funds for the engine replacement or the entire replacement of the switcher itself. I don't know if funding specifically just for the emissions control system will be included in eligible costs. If it is to be included, you will have to demonstrate why that particular portion is crucial for the entire assembly of the system. So once again, that could potentially fall into a case-by-case scenario, depending on the necessity and how that particular portion works with the engine itself. So again, feel free to do apply, and we can definitely work with you to see if that portion can be included in the cost.
And I think, Ping, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the replacement technology, regardless of the technology, has to meet the Tier 4 emission standards. So that means
Correct.
it would have to have CARB verification or certification that that technology meets the Tier 4 emission standards for this program.
Correct. Thank you, Vicki.
The next question is coming in from a small fleet applicant. Are there additional resources available to smaller fleets to apply?
So the funding amount is set by both the consent decree and the BMP. If you are a smaller fleet looking for more funding, I would encourage you to look at other staffing availability, such as local funds with other air districts, and also potentially any private funds that are out there. Those are the funds that are potentially staffed with VW funds. Otherwise, if you're a small fleet or a small business, there is no extra funding added on top of what's currently available under this program.
Someone asked about the switcher locomotive again thing. I believe it was that the locomotive switcher maximum are 2,300 horsepower. Some existing switcher can be between 2,000 and 3,000 horsepower. Would a Tier 4 solution about 2,300 be eligible for funding?
So if you are above that limit, the consent decree was actually the document, that was the legal document agreed upon for the VW Trust. That's the limit set there. So we cannot actually go beyond that 2,300. So if your engine is greater than that, then we would unfortunately not be able to fund that.
Okay. The next question, someone just wants to confirm about the out-of-state applicant. If you're based in another state, will they be eligible for funding?
Yes, so we don't look at the headquartered location of your company for the VW program. We're looking for the actual operation percentage within California of your actual equipment. So if you're based in New York, let's just say, that's fine, as long as your equipment is operated at least 75% of the time in the state of California.
So, the next question, someone asked, are the sweepers eligible to apply?
No, for California, street sweepers are not eligible to apply.
What about the dump trucks? Are they subject to the minimum mileage of 20,000 per year?
Correct. Dump trucks are subject to 20,000. Again, it's only waste haulers that would be subject to the 10,000. So basically garbage trucks will be the 10,000.
Are the trucks need to be registered through California DMV?
Well, again, so you're either registered as with an IRP or you're registered through California. So yes, you do need to provide 12 months of registration. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone.
Let me see the next question. Is there a list of eligible trucks for drainage?
We do not have a list specifically, as in like the HVIC program I know has a list or a catalog of equipment that is available. So for the VW program, we don't specifically have a list. But again, we encourage everyone to speak to the different dealerships to see what equipment technology under meeting the 0.02 NOx is eligible. I know a lot of that technology is commercially available, so there is a wide range of OEMs that provide this technology. So it would be a good idea just to do a search to see what would fit your needs, as well as fit your budget.
Christina, I'm going to give you a little bit of a break. I just kind of wanted to mention that, you know, this program is relatively long-term. It was originally scoped out as a 10-year program. And as we move along in the program, you know, we're kind of learning and hopefully making changes to the program along the way to be able to get the funds out sooner and get the reductions that are needed for this program. So any ideas you have, please rely on that website, shoot them over to us. If there's current restrictions in the program for your application, don't hesitate to put a bug in our ear. We will be continually working with CARB to make sure this program and these funds can be accessible to get the NOx reductions that we need. So I kind of wanted to just put that out there, that we will be working on this program for the next several years. And, you know, to the best of our ability, we will try to, you know, present situations to CARB to see where the program can be modified to maybe open up a little bit more and not be as restrictive. But that being said, we're running the solicitation and we're here to help. So if you have any questions, you know, we're going to be here to assist you throughout the process. Thank you.
Okay, I see one question coming up. They want to know what type of documents needed to show the minimum mileage.
So any kind of maintenance documentation, any documentation, I know a lot of trucks have a logging system in their control panel that they can print out. So any kind of documentation that basically gives us a good read of your odometer reading. That would be the type of document we are looking for.
Do government replacement vehicles have minimum mileage minimum to apply?
Correct. So that 10,000 and 20,000 minimum mileage requirement doesn't matter if you're government or non-government. We just need to ensure your project is cost effective for us to move forward.
I know we, on our website, we have a list of frequently asked questions. So if we weren't able to cover any questions you have about the program today, you know, you can access that frequently asked questions. And I believe that's kind of a living document. So as questions come in that we need to answer, we'll try and get those posted on that document. So you can always take a look at that document and hopefully it'll answer any questions you might have after this webinar.
From the registration, I see one question. They're asking about infrastructure incentive. Is this one applicable for this program?
Not for infrastructure specifically. So infrastructure under VW is sort of its own category, or it falls under a Bay Area's zero emission freight and marine project category. So not under combustion infrastructure is not included specifically.
Another question that comes from the registration, the applicant wants to know if a lease to own applicable for this program.
I'm sorry,
a lease to own option.
Okay. So if you are actually leasing the equipment, so if you're not the owner, then no, your unit is not eligible. However, if you are a leasing or rental company that owns the equipment but leases the equipment out, then yes, you are eligible for funding. So basically, in a nutshell, you have to own the equipment.
Due to the truck and bus regulation for the engine model year requirements, what is the oldest year that the program will allow?
So that sort of depends on your equipment. I know the date in here starts for the Class 7 and 8. It kind of starts at 1992, but obviously that is not going to apply for most Class 7 and 8 vehicles. That only really applies to waste haulers that kind of fell into the solid waste collection vehicle regulation. Those are the older pieces of equipment. Otherwise, I think you're looking at anywhere between, I want to say 2005 to 2007, that might still make the cut, but are cutting it closer. So if you have an engine that is at least 2010, that is not going to be an issue. You are going to be eligible. For equipment that are older, they do still have to be in compliance. So as long as they are in compliance currently with the regulations, be it with the PM filter, then you would still be eligible. However, again, a word of warning, please do be aware of your upcoming compliance deadlines, because we don't we don't want to be in a situation where your compliance deadline is the end of this year. So January 1st of 2022, that's going to be cutting it very close for you in the ability to purchase a new vehicle. So do watch out for that.
Yeah, just to clarify, Ping, on that last point, the new vehicle would have to be in place prior to the compliance deadline. So that's what Ping's saying in terms of the timeline. Looking at it right now, if you have a compliance deadline by January 1, 2022, from what we understand is the delivery timeline for these newer vehicles, it probably wouldn't be in place prior to that compliance deadline. So just keep that in mind, and we're here to help you with that. If you want to give us, reach out to us, we can help you with that.
Sorry, Ping and Vicky, I think there's a follow-up question about the lease to own. Does a capital lease qualify? For example, if the truck is owned by the company and the company has the title of the truck, but they pay off the loan over 6 years, will they be qualified to apply?
So perhaps this person will have to clarify a bit for me. I'm understanding it as the company currently owns the equipment, but they're not done paying it off. If that's not what the question is, please let us know. If it is, then you have to pay off the equipment to be eligible for the program. So you have to actually own it. If the day you apply, the next month you paid off the entire equipment and can demonstrate you've owned the equipment for a year, that might be something we can discuss. But if you have a good another 3-4 years on that lease to pay off, then no, that equipment technically does not belong to you. It doesn't have a clean title. So it would not be eligible for funding.
Okay. Someone asked about the contracting timeline. What is the approximate approval time for a contract?
Evaluations take some time. It really depends on how complete your application is. Very complete applications with all documentation gets processed fairly quickly. However, if your application is incomplete, we will work with you. However, as a reminder, even though this is a first come, first served solicitation, you cannot give us blank documents as a placeholder to get your name in line. Those applications will be rejected. We will ask you to resubmit with the appropriate information. So the evaluation time, it does depend on application completeness and the information that we need from the applicant. The contracting process is going to be electronic, so it will be a faster process because it is first come, first served, and we will be evaluating as we move forward. So we'll be basically trying to evaluate and contract as quickly as possible to get these contracts out to all of our applicants.
And when would be the last day to submit the application?
That will completely depend on how fast the solicitation gets oversubscribed. Again, it's not a competitive solicitation. It is first come, first served. So those with a complete application first in line will be first to begin our evaluation process and get your contract out. Once we've exhausted funds, then we will close the solicitation. So there's no exact science. It really depends on the applications received and if they're deemed eligible to receive an award.
I think, Christina, you're still breaking up, but I think the question was, are Class 8 fuel cell trucks that rely on hydrogen fuel be included? Those are not included within this funding category. This is intended for internal combustion engine technologies only, but South Coast does administer another funding category called Class 8 zero emission freight and drayage trucks. And that category recently closed because we were oversubscribed, and we are working to execute contracts right now with those entities. We do anticipate a second solicitation to come with an additional installment of funds And Ping, what's the schedule for that next solicitation?
So it's about 63 million for the second installment, and we are anticipating to be able to open solicitation probably late 2022 or early 2023. So again, if you are interested in that category, as Vicky stated, please keep an eye out because there are a good amount of funding available for that category coming not too long from now.
Another question about the ocean-going vessel. Are there any funds for ocean-going vessel in Port of LA or Port of Long Beach?
Yes, so as long as you fall into the category of ferries, tugs, and tows, then yes. If you don't fall into that category, then VW funds don't actually include anything else for funding. So again, statewide solicitation, it doesn't matter what port you are, as long as you are a port in California and you fall into the category of a ferry, tug, or tow. And funding for that is up to $1 million.
And the next question about the MP registration again, Ping. Someone asked if the truck was registered plan on off, would they be eligible to submit the application?
That's actually a really good question, and it really depends on the situation for that plant non-op. So generally speaking, we want operational equipment. However, due to the COVID pandemic, to our understanding, for certain businesses, there might be a period where it was planned non-op just because of the world situation. So please do reach out to us because we do have to dig a little bit and better understand the circumstances behind that. If it was just because you plan to retire that equipment, then no, it's not eligible for funding. If it was due to circumstances beyond your control, then potentially. So it's a sort of a case-by-case situation. But again, please do reach out to us so we can get more information from you for that specific situation.
The next questions relate to the contracting and the new vehicles. I guess this person wants to know how long does it take to take the replacement of the new vehicles?
Yeah, I think Ping, I could give it a try. We probably didn't completely answer that question. So just to be clear, we won't initiate the contracting until we have a complete application and all the eligibility issues have been resolved. So once that happens, because there may be some back and forth with you to complete information, get clarification, but once we deem it complete and it's eligible, we will go ahead and initiate the contracting. That currently that process takes anywhere between 2 to 3 months. We are hoping we have developed a grant management system that will be tested for this program very soon. And we're hoping that that new system will help expedite that timeline. But I think for now, you can assume anywhere between 2 and 3 months to get a contract.
And just to add a little bit onto that as well, we are also looking for compliance issues. So we do have to verify compliance. If there is any kind of compliance consideration, that might also delay potential contracting. So just be aware of that as well. That could be any kind of trucks that are perhaps not going to be compliant coming up soon, or if there's any kind of background situations that might put a red flag in a CARB's mind. So we will try, of course, to get the contracts out again as quickly as possible, but we are verifying information very carefully.
There's one question about the dismantler. What are your requirements for a dismantler?
So currently Currently, we have actually been utilizing approved dismantlers through our various other incentive programs. They go through, for South Coast AQMD at least, they go through a training process. We ensure that they are proceeding with the dismantling as expected. With other air districts, they might need to follow a specific, some sort of specific guidelines, or need to ensure that they meet certain criteria as well before any kind of MOU or agreement gets from the air district to the dismantler. So if you're looking for specific on the dismantlers, please reach out to us. If you are a dismantler and interested in participating in the program, please reach out to us.
So are those dismantler needs to be South Coast AQMD approved?
It doesn't need to be AQMD, South Coast AQMD approved. It needs to be a air district approved. Again, this is a statewide solicitation. We're talking about dismantlers falling into various jurisdictions, which is why the requirements might vary depending upon where you're really located for dismantling, where your dismantling facility is located. So it has to be one that has an agreement and approved dismantler with an air district. It could be one from Sonoma. It could be one, again, from San Diego. It could be anywhere, not just South Coast AQMD.
One last question.
I could try to clarify that last question. So, you know, of course, if you're an entity, you want to use a dismantler within the South Coast Air Basin, we already run other incentive funding programs that have lists that have approved dismantlers. So we would be relying on those lists from other programs for this program. And then as Ping said, if you're an entity and you want to use a dismantler in another air district, that's completely acceptable. You could be, you know, like an entity in a different air district that's applying for these funds. All we ask is that you work with the local air district to get their list of dismantlers. We've been compiling that for this program. So we should have a list for that specific region of dismantlers that you can rely on to scrap your old vehicle. So again, just reach out to us and we'll be happy to provide you the list that we have.
Are you specifically asking if the funding amount is not enough to cover your equipment replacement or repower? If so, then this will be a topic under the development category for the next solicitation potentially, or even the next installment. These are conversations that are ongoing with CARB to determine the flexibility in the amount of funding available for each category. So at this time, the funding amount that is determined, one, again, by the consent decree, and two, by CARB. So those numbers we cannot adjust at this moment. But if you do have concerns, please do reach out to us so we can better understand the environment and to see how we can make this program obviously a better program for everyone who's interested in funds.
Okay. One more question, Ping. With the diesel tank truck that hauls petroleum products eligible to apply?
Yes, actually. CARB has stated as long as it's freight, it doesn't matter what type of freight. So yes, that is potentially eligible. Once again, as long as you fall into the category class 7 and 8 and you meet the minimum requirements.
Right, we're coming up on the top of the hour here, and certainly want to thank you, Ping and Vicki, for doing such a marvelous job of answering all these questions. And we are very grateful to our audience for all the questions that they have asked today. It's been very educational. So again, Vicki Ping, thank you for your expertise and information about the funding solicitation for this important California statewide combustion and marine projects solicitation. Everybody look out for a follow-up email with the recorded link early next week. And as a reminder, please fill out the quick 30-second survey that will pop up as you leave the webinar. Thanks again for joining us today.